Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining this afternoon. This is the second installment of CBMA's High School Excellence webinar, and this webinar is the first in a two-part series focusing on Black male educators in the classroom. Just a logistics reminder, if you are listening via audio on your computer or on a phone, via the phone line, if you can, it's easier, it will be better for you as we move into the video portion of the webinar to listen via your computer or by whichever method you're listening to us right now, which has the web login platform available for you. It'll be easier to hear the audio for the video when we get to that portion. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Sheba Rogers, who is the Promise of Place Manager based out of Detroit with the Campaign for Black Male Achievement.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our High School Excellence webinar today. We are so excited to just dig in this afternoon on just such a very important topic. So thanks again for taking time to spend with us. I'll start with just an overview of the Campaign for Black Male Achievement and a little bit about our High School Excellence framework. The Campaign for Black Male Achievement was established in 2008 as an initiative of the Open Societies Foundation. We are a national membership network that seeks to ensure the growth, the sustainability, and impact of leaders and organizations committed to the life outcomes of Black men and boys. And so in 2015, CBMA spun off from the Open Societies Foundation as an independent entity, which supports a growing network of more than 5,200 leaders and more than across 2,700 organizations. And we are continuing to grow under the fierce leadership of our CEO, Sean Dove. We have a number of resources and services for capacity building, network building, and strategic communication. So please feel free to go on our website and look through it and just learn a little bit more about the work that we do. And so I'll also go over a little bit of what we're going to be doing here on our High School Excellence webinar. So in our High School Excellence webinar, 2017, we're launching a series of webinars that's specifically going to focus on high school excellence for Black boys across our nation. And so today marks our second month launching the Promise of Place, the High School Excellence webinar, and it's a two-part series. So today is the first of the two-part series. And so we'll be focusing on increasing, addressing the challenges of, and providing solutions to the lack of Black educators in the classroom. We have experienced speakers from the field who will share their knowledge and experience with us very shortly. So we are all in for a great dialogue this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our speakers. But I want you to please mark your calendars for part 2 of the series on June 27th, which will also be held at this same time, so at 4:00 p.m. We want to talk a little bit about our partnerships and our members. We kind of highlighted a little bit of that, but we have just very grateful for our generous donors and funders who support our work, including the Open Societies Foundation, J.P. Morgan Chase, the Skillman Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Keenan Charitable Trust, Ford Foundation, Caper Center for Social Impact, Knight Foundation, Casey Family Programs, the California Endowment, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Heinz Foundation, Carnegie Corporation, and the Chicago Community Trust. We're just very grateful for their continued support and allowing us to continue to carry out this work. And with that, we have a number of partners that we've been able to support more deeply across the nation, both supporting and contributing to some of their work nationally as well, including Be Me, My Brother's Keeper Alliance, Cities United, the National League of Cities, Echoing Green, NYC Young Men's Initiative, Executive Alliance to expand opportunities for boys and young men of color, and Rumble, Young Men Rumble. So we're very excited about our national partnerships as well as our donors, but we're just also very excited about our membership and just being able to lift up voices from the field, such as today's High School Excellence webinar. And so the next slide. We have, the CBMA offers a variety of resources and supports for our members and for the community just to tap in to continue to do this work in your respective communities and support for your work wherever you may be doing, even if you're not working directly in schools. We do have a number of resources that support this work. So I'll outline here the Promise of Place, Cities Advancing Black Male Achievement came out in 2015, and it was the first of its kind report to track and communicate cities' efforts to advance Black male achievement. And we're actually in the process of working on our Promise of Place 2.0 report, and so be on the lookout for that. It'll be coming out later this year, and we're very excited to continue tracking the movement happening in the field. Another resource is our Building a Beloved Community, Strengthening the Field of Black Male Achievement. So this report, we just really look at where do we go from here through the philanthropic support for Black men and boys, and so really lifting up what's happening through the philanthropic community. And so in this report, we explore the diverse and multidisciplinary work being done from the field to advance Black male achievement through funding. Quantifying Hope, Philanthropic Support for Black Men and Boys is another report that you'll find a lot of value in. This report analyzes U.S. funding trends for Black men and boys and describes recent initiatives in the field. So you'll find that very useful as well. And then where do we go from here? I also mentioned that. But this report draws on 8 years of grants and data and just really looks across history over the past 2 decades to look at the trends in foundation funding for Black men and boys. So these are some of the things that we do also highlight in the Promise of Place report as well. But these separate reports are also just very useful to just kind of dig into as well and just kind of explore what's happening across the field in these variety of areas. All right, so what we'd like to do right now is before we hear from our speakers, we will play a short video that features the story of Toussaint Lamont Stone from Oakland, California. Some of you may have watched the video on our last webinar, but we wanted to uplift his voice today just from a different perspective as he speaks candidly about the impact of having Black men teachers in his school and sort of what that impacts mean to him. So this will be a great segue into more information about CBMA's High School Excellence Framework right before we hear from our speakers. And so Jamila will share some information about technology and how it'll be best for us to really hear the video on today.
Great, thank you so much, Shiva. So the video, you'll be able to hear the audio for it if you're listening in, again, via the web platform. You can listen in via your computer, or if you're listening on an iPad, or if you're listening on your iPhone, but you have to be logged in to the web platform to hear it, and you won't be able to hear it through the phone line alone, unfortunately. Or what you can do is we sent along the PowerPoint, again, in the reminder email we sent out around 2:30 today, and the web link is actually in the PowerPoint itself, so you can go ahead and look at it independently. But we're going to press play. The video is about 5 minutes long, and then we'll come back to continue the discussion in the webinar.
My name is Toussaint Lamont Stone. I am 18 years old, and I'm from Oakland, California. I've been going to public school my whole life. So I've had friends from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. I have a story to tell you from every grade year. It's like, it's always somebody not making it. Family problems, kicked out of school. My friends have been to jail for things that I've done with them. Like, I knew Donovan since about the 3rd grade. Once he got out, it wasn't the same. Somebody that I've known for so long that I know has the potential to be somebody oh so great is sitting with no more motivation. They just suck all the motivation out of your body before you even are old enough to make a difference.
I talk to and encounter too many young black boys who are hyper aware of the fact that their humanity is debated, that they go to classrooms with educators who don't believe that they're capable of doing wonderful things.
Black children are more likely to be suspended, more likely to be arrested in school. What we've seen over the years are young men being pushed out of school and into a pipeline to prison instead of into a pipeline to college and success.
This is final exhibition at Met West. Let's get some energy going.
I'm finally a senior at Met West High School, ready to graduate.
To watch you go from this transformation of like struggling who I am in the world to being King Toussaint Stone. I'd like to say I take just a little credit, but you can't have transformation unless you commit to something. And you committed to something, brother.
I'm the founding executive director of African American Male Achievement for Oakland Unified School District. Our office was created to improve the educational outcomes of African American males from preschool through 12th grade, as well as disrupt the type of structural racism that we're perpetuating, low expectations, this achievement gap, and a feeling of inadequacy.
We as black boys gravitate to the black men in the schools, definitely. I interned in the office for 2 years now. Baba Chris is like a second father to me. I see myself as a leader. He saw me shine in my light. He's showing me how different I am compared to what everybody expects me to be.
Oakland was one of our early entrepreneurial investments. It's created the first of its kind department of African American Male Achievement inside a school district.
Now I'll be moving into my senior thesis project. I was focused on curriculum building. It's definitely a passion for me. I've been interested in Black history since I popped out the womb.
Part of the perpetuation of internalized oppression and why there is an achievement gap is the prevailing narrative in public school education is a white narrative.
Like at first, if you're just so used to being called the N-word, you might hear King and it might catch you from surprise. Like, it's just realizing who you are, where you come from, the wealth of our heritage, the wealth of our ancestry is like, we so much more than what they try to give us credit for.
So I guess, yeah, the main things we wanted to go over for this were the final steps for closing out your academics, college next steps.
I wanted to go straight into a 4-year.
Of course you did.
And then reality just started hitting me from every direction. Because I'll be stepping out of my comfort zone.
Growth is uncomfortable.
So I did community college 3 years. I wasn't ready to transfer, just me emotionally I wasn't ready, study skills I wasn't ready. So actually community college for me at that time was a great strategy.
Just know that you have the support underneath you for whatever decision you make for yourself.
It's hard for me to make a decision though, like it really is.
You cocky as hell. But it's okay, we see it, you right? We just want you to be wise.
That's right, yeah.
Know where you want to go, and that's what we're going to help you get.
It's important for us to start thinking about high school excellence and thinking about education as a vehicle to start measuring how we're succeeding.
We reduced suspension rates by 44% as a school district. We've increased the graduation rate now by 20%. For the Kings that are in our mandated development classes, the grade point average has increased by 1.13.
Schools, families, the communities, and leaders. We fundamentally believe that if you get those 4 folks engaged in this work, you're going to see exponential growth, not just in graduation rates, but their ability to function in college, career, and community.
5 years from now, we want to be able to point to some key cities where we say, this is how you win when it comes to Black male achievement.
Toussaint, a once and future king. Sometimes the crown can feel too heavy and burdensome. Sometimes the crown is too light to even notice it's there. But always, the feeling of purpose is deep in his footsteps.
I feel like my name showed the way I'm supposed to carry myself. A warrior, freedom fighter. I cannot be beaten. It's like I know all the odds are stacked against me, but when I'm stacked on the top of the shoulders of my father and Baba Chris and Amari and Cyro, I'm taller than a giant, man. I'm not tripping off of nothing.
So
Okay,
we
Sheba.
hope. Oh, you ready, Jamila?
Yep, go ahead.
Excellent. So I'm sure, like many of you, I just always love watching that video. That's CBMA's Pipeline to Success video, and it is also on our website if you want to watch it again or forward it to any of your colleagues. But I just, who's not inspired by Toussaint's story and just hearing him speak and hearing him overcome and just seeing his work just move forward and go off to college just makes me proud. But so I love watching that video, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. But as we move into our high school excellence framework, the Campaign for Black Male Achievements HSE framework has been developed to elevate the relevant levers we believe will support Black men and boys as they transition from high school to college, career, and community. Some of you may have seen our HSE framework already here on the screen. So it is the same, it's just a little redesigned, and I think very, very nice. The 5 pillars of our framework include academic rigor and achievement, academic and future planning, family and community involvement, opportunity access and retention supports, and school presence and engagement. We see work around these 5 key areas as critical to providing robust and high-quality opportunities for our Black boys and sons, and ultimately to support the foundation of building a beloved community where Black boys are supported to thrive and succeed in life, in school, and with the support of a loving and supportive community. Using the 5 identified levers and associated activities that you see here, CBMA, along with our High School Excellence Advisory Board, believe that our framework will not just increase high school graduation rates, but also ensure that schools and communities are supported in this process. So it's really the work that we're committed to doing. CBMA has a history of making history, quote, as commonly stated by our CEO, Sean Dove. And so the High School Excellence Framework will continue to the history-making mindset of CBMA. So with further ado, we want to move forward and hear from our dynamic speakers today.
Great, thank you, Sheba. So first we're going to hear from Audrey Sandro, who is the principal at Brown Education Campus, which is a school in DC Public Schools in Washington, DC.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So hello, everyone. My name is Audrey Sandro. I'm principal of Hugh and Brown Education Campus in Washington, D.C., part of DC Public Schools. For full transparency, we are not in high school. We're actually a pre-K 3 through 8th grade campus. A little history about the school. In this particular part of northeast of Washington, D.C., in the Langston Terrace area, there were 3 schools that were built for the purpose of educating the community. Students can actually go from elementary school to what was Brown Junior High School and then down the street to Spingarn High School without ever leaving this one block. So they can go from kindergarten through high school on this street known as Education Hill. We have since consolidated 2 of the schools, and we adopted the elementary school program and extended it down to pre-K 3, which means a pre-K 3 to 8th grade campus. Here at Brown, this is my 4th year at Brown, and coming in, and especially my 2nd year, I would say, I noticed that, and the team noticed, that there was a need for males of color in the classroom, and for 2 reasons in particular. Number one, we were having a conversation, and I brought up, I wrote the conversation, and one of our educators said to me, when you take a picture and you're in a picture, and you turn your phone around and you look at the finished product, the first person you look for is yourself. And how often, and when we look at our teaching population, how often do students see themselves in front of them? And we then decided we extended that thought to say there are males in our building that need role models, number one. And then also for our young ladies, role models in how they should best be treated. And sometimes they didn't get those types of role models in their communities. So we made it our business to make sure that we sought out qualified males of color for the classroom. One thing that I found in recruitment and speaking to other principals, we noticed that principals were saying that, well, the males of color leave my school, they don't stay. There's lack of commitment. And my pushback was, so what do you have them doing? And in most cases, they had the hard to reach students, or they were in custodial or behavior tech or anything associated with behavior, but much less associated with social emotional growth. It was more punitive instead of therapeutic. And when we looked for opportunities to recruit males of color, we definitely looked for, we promoted opportunities for growth. My pushback to those principals were, what would make you think that educator of color didn't want anything different than a Caucasian female, a Caucasian male? They joined and they made this career choice based on their love for education and growing communities and students. So one of the main things we started doing is we partnered with an organization called Urban Teachers. And one thing that was great about that is the educators in this program, they will lead the program certified in a content area and special education. We thought this was key because we noticed that coming into the particular school, that most of our students, special education or referred to special education, were our young Black boys, all the way from kindergarten to 8th grade. And with educators that came with this dual certification, they were able to scaffold lessons and also provide interventions to students that kept them out of the referral process for special education. So keeping them in the general education setting, they were able to provide lessons and supports and interventions that every student can benefit from. And instead of coming in not knowing what to do with students of high need, they were able to do that in each lesson. When we did our recruitment process, we also focused on all positions. We were called going to 2 trainings. One training was for behaviors, in school suspension, behavior techs. This is a district training. Then the following day, we went to a teacher training, and it was a totally different population, where there were more Black males in the training for behavior techs and suspension coordinator, and much less in the teacher education training and planning for the upcoming school year. So we were able, over a 2-year process, we were able to hire classroom leads and paraprofessionals in our pre-K3 and pre-K4 classrooms. We were able to hire a Black male librarian, a Black male reading specialist. Highlighting our 3rd grade team currently, we have 2 Black males that are our our social studies and science, social studies and ELA leads, and then the partner teacher is also the math and science lead. So we were able to recruit in 1 year 17 males of color in instructional positions. And so that was a highlight for us. And then when we would go to recruitment fairs, we would put these talented men in the front lines. So as people were coming to speak to our educators about vacancies, we put in front of them what we were looking for. And we did honestly get, looking for Black males, I'm coming over to your table. You need to be a qualified Black male in order to be in front of our students. So we definitely focused on that. And just as a result of this, we noticed that our students opened up. They wanted to impress this gentleman in front of them. And part of our work as the male leads in the building was to create that sense of pride that was innate. So you weren't working to reach your reading goal or math goal for the person in front of you anymore. You were doing it outside of this person in front of you. Our educators know that in this building, we're not just educators, but we are servant leaders, and we're working with change agents that are making change in their school and in their home and their community. A talking point that, all of this is real qualitative. But when we speak to our growth and our students, for example, looking at our reading data for this year, in the beginning of the school year, our middle school students, we had 47% of our middle school boys of color, just our males of color, 47% were reading below basic, so below grade level. By the middle of the school year, of course, with training and support and goal setting with students, and training and support for those educators in terms of providing quality lessons, we were able to decrease that number to 24% reading below basic. So that was a decrease of 23%. In the beginning of the year, only 10% of our students were proficient. By the middle of the year, we had 28% of our students reading on or above grade level, and 0% being advanced. And by the middle of the year, 4% were actually advanced. And our elementary students, in the beginning of the year, 43% of our students were reading above grade level or on grade level. The breakdown of that would be 18 above and 25% proficient. By the middle of the year, that number grew from 43% to 52%. And a bigger piece that we celebrated with our students and with our educators, of that 18% that were above grade level in reading at the beginning of the year, that grew to 35%, and this in a couple of months. And what we want to make sure is that this is the result of student perseverance, student work, but it's also in our work of growing the adult learner in the building, making sure that these Black males in the building were not only growing and creating a sense of community amongst themselves and also amongst themselves, but is actually growing as an educator in the building, which is many times taken for granted because we're so stuck on student achievement that we oftentimes hurdle the adult learner. And we wanted to make sure that the adult learner was growing and we can sharpen the tools in their arsenal so that they're able to better provide lessons and able to grow as educators in their own craft.
Great. Thank you so much, Andre. Next, we're going to hear from Yoder Faulkner, who is a parent at the Frederick Douglass Academy for Young Men in Detroit, Michigan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, CBMA, and thank you, Mr. Chris Rutherford, for inviting me to such a wonderful and very important forum. My son, Yoder Faulkner, is a student at Frederick Douglass, and when I was approached, I thought, how ironic. I felt elated to even want to have such a conversation. I felt that these types of forums and these discussions are very rarely talked about. And when Mr. Rutherford approached me, I thought that it is tremendous that my son is able to see a African-American male in such a positive manner. The imagery of today is quite important from the standpoint of sales and commercial standpoint. And our young people spend a tremendous amount of time looking at these imagery, whether it be the streaming of media, whether it be television shows, cable, you name it, etc. And from the very earliest of time that we've had television and media outlets, it's been used for many of direction, whether, once again, in sales or whether it in just the depiction. And we have had, for so much time, negative imagery of African Americans. And to have a teacher that is not only physically there, but is educating our youth is very impactful to my son. It gives him, I would feel, a sense of hope when we so often have our young Blacks that feel hopeless. And the media intentionally, since the time of its existence, has depicted us as in negative imagery. From some of the television shows that we were in, in the earlier days up until present day. It's been so much buffoonery shown, and if I can even say coon type of imagery shown, and these images are picked up by our young black males and our women. And we look at them, and it becomes a sense of dulling the senses and not uplifting as they do our counterparts. And so to have positive imagery, to have that interaction is very, very positive as a parent. We just don't see it. And when we do see our black imagery on television, once again, it is not depicted in the most flattering way. We represent maybe 15% or less of America, but yet you will see us 85% of the time on any of the television shows, lately news at 5 o'clock. You're going to see us depicted in a manner in which we're robbing and killing, and we're the drug dealers, and we're the pimps and pushers, or whatever you say. It's always a negative image. But in fact, when you look at the statistics, Caucasians have as high a rate of arrest and incarceration as African Americans. So I find it, this program, and I find these forums extraordinarily needed for our young black men. We're in a very, 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 if I can say, spot where our young men are feeling hopeless. Our rate of decline in HBCUs is at a record low for our African Americans. We have political people that want to cut the funding for our HBCUs. They feel that it's not necessary. And then when you, how do you argue the case when, again, the numbers are low of enrollment? And so these type programs are beneficial and needed so much for our young black males. And I am very, very grateful for the CBMA. I'm very grateful to Chris Rutherford wanting to bring the light and to have more of us talk about this and have more people want to be involved to make a change for our young blacks, because right now they're in a very, very negative spotlight. And I am so thankful to have an opportunity to speak and say thank you once again for allowing me to speak on behalf of Frederick Douglass as a parent, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Yoder. It's really great to hear kind of the parent perspective around high school excellence and around black male development more broadly. Next, we're going to hear from Chris Rutherford, who is the program manager at the Campaign for Black Male Achievement and is also a former special education teacher out of Detroit, Michigan.
Thank you, Jamila. I also wanted to take 1 second to uplift Mr. Faulkner, whose son is a student at Frederick Douglass Academy for Young Men. And he has an outstanding son, and although I am not his teacher, I want to uplift one of our Building Beloved community fellows, Quan Nellums, as one of Mr. Faulkner's, his son's one of his teachers at Frederick Douglass Academy, who's just doing a fantastic job. And obviously Mr. Faulkner has done a fantastic job raising his son. So yes, we do want to surround our black men with as many positive role models, not just the fathers who are at home, but also out here in the community. And so I want to say thank you to Mr. Faulkner. But my journey as an educator has been varied. But I will say one thing, that being a teacher is probably one of the greatest jobs that I've ever had in my life, one of the greatest career paths that I've ever taken. So during college, I participated in one of the most pivotal events in my life, and that was taking over a building in college for 11 days to force Wayne State University to create a Department of Africana Studies. And that event, that single event, ignited my lifelong passion for education and working with young men. It was during that time that my whole view of the world shifted, and I was able to see like there was a desperate need for our young brothers out here to get and have some of the guidance that I got from my father, but for them to see it on a daily basis if they didn't have it at home. I can recall oftentimes being a teacher in the Detroit public schools, whenever a man showed up in the school with a suit on, my students automatically thought he was my brother, like my blood brother. And I would tell him he's my brother from another mother. But nevertheless, it was the fact that they often didn't see men in their own communities and in their own spaces and places that put on a suit, put on a tie. And while that's not the end-all, tell-all of being an effective educator, it just spoke to the challenges that we face in making sure that our students see every facet of our life. Being a special education teacher, as I stated, was one of the most rewarding and fulfilling things that I've done in my life, but it was also one of the most difficult. As a special education teacher, I work long days to move my students forward, but I don't ever remember being tired from working from those long days. I started a basketball team in the school. I started a drill team in the school. I started a cheer team in the school, a mentoring program at my school, because I knew that I needed to do something more, like the classroom just wasn't enough. I touched my students in the classroom, but there were young black males throughout the building that I wanted to touch, whether they had a male in the home or not. But I knew that my being in that building was impactful. There were times when I would take the time to walk through the neighborhoods of the school that I taught in, and the parents would literally come out on the porch, and sometimes they would say, we haven't had many teachers walk through our neighborhood before, even though the school was right around the block. And so it was important for me to be visible through the community, not just for black boys, but also for the young black, our black sisters out there as well, to know that I was someone there, hopefully doing something positive in that. I think the story needs to be told about the benefits of being an educator so that we can recruit more black males into the field. There's been attack on the teaching profession as a whole. However, there has also been a lot of myths. The myth that anyone can be a teacher. There's a myth that this is savior's work. We talk about how exhausting it is, but we don't always talk about that teachers get most of their summers off and all the holidays to rejuvenate. And trust me, they need every hour and minute they can get. So it's not a free vacation. They need that rejuvenation time, as I desperately needed it. But we need to tell the story of the benefits of education to our students and where it can lead you, even if you do get burned out from it, or even if it is too much for you. There are things that it will lead you to that we need to make sure our young men know about. My work in education has led to tremendous opportunities. For instance, because of my time as a teacher, I worked at the top of city government doing community-based grassroots work and building community programs. Because of my time as a teacher, I was able to work in corporate America as an education consultant. Most recently, I was able to work at the University of Michigan, as well as now here at the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, helping to build the high school excellence framework and making sure students are able to make their the best post-secondary decisions that they can. So working as a teacher has had some challenges. I won't say that it's all a rosy picture, but the lives that you impact are just tremendous, and there's no way to describe what it has done for me in my life's trajectory. There was a belief that by some teachers that this wasn't man's work and that I needed to be in corporate America making all the money I can. But like a lot of young men now, I had a passion for social justice. Back then, we just called it activism. And there were teachers or principals that I could look up to, like Brother Samuels. There was here in Detroit, Dr. Clifford Watson of Malcolm X, and Dr. Ray Johnson of Paul Robeson Academy. And so those were men that I could look up to and see teaching as a viable career and the aspects of it and the pathways that led into teaching that I could take. And it was because of them that I pursued the work. So I just wanted to say that, most of all, what I've learned from being a black male educator in Detroit, I learned from my students, and they were the most impactful people in my life and still are today. I can still think of times of the things that were said to me by students, not just what I imparted to them, but what they imparted to me, and I am eternally grateful for that. And education has been the guiding force in deciding to live a life of service.
Thank you so much, Chris. So that rounds out our Voices from the Field portion. So now we're going to move into the Q&A. And just as a reminder for those that are participating today, you can submit questions that we will ask the presenters via the chat box that should be on your screen. So feel free to type any questions you have, and we will make sure we try to get through as many as we can today. But in the event that we cannot, we will follow up with you. So we do already have a couple of questions that people have submitted. The first one is focusing on statistics around how high school young men may or may not be being distracted, and how they learn best, and how that relates to who the teacher is. And so people wanted to know if you can speak to, and this is for any of you, if you notice a change or a difference in who black men and boys are being taught by, whether that's being a male teacher, female teacher, white teacher, what have you, and if you kind of speak to some of those nuances and those differences. Whoever wants to take the first stab at that one.
Could you repeat the question a little bit for me, Jamil? I'm sorry, it faded out for me.
Yeah, no problem. So the question was if you've noticed a change or a difference on black male performance or attention in class as it relates to who they're being taught by, so if that's a male teacher or a female teacher or what have you.
Yeah, so there are, I've seen some data out there, and there's a lot of research out there that talks about how having a black male teacher is important for young men as well as, all students. Having a black teacher, period, for black students is very important. Most recently, there was a New York Times opinion article about having one black teacher can make a huge difference, and that there's a study which found that black boys who had a black teacher during elementary school were less likely to drop out of high school. And it also linked the presence of black teachers to kids' expectations of attending college. And really what it does, as Mr. Faulkner outlined, is that, we are bombarded with negative images of black males, right? So there is a narrative that black men aren't doing anything, but we know here at CBMA, and we're spreading across the country, that that's simply not true. And we have to uplift those who are doing it. There are black men every day in and around schools that are helping. There are black men on fields helping kids on football teams and baseball teams. And we have to uplift those men. There are black men like Mr. Faulkner who's raising their kids. And we have to uplift those men to change that narrative so that our kids can see that, yes, that's the type of man I want to be. That's who I can become. And it's not always about being the corporate executive or somebody super important. Like I used to tell my father, I used to want him to come to my career days because he was a man that raised 5 children successfully, and he never saw the benefit in talking to other kids about it because he was modest like that. However, it was always important for me to say that's an achievement that we have to uplift, because if you look at TV, the narrative says that we're not doing that. And so, I think it's very important to make sure that we continue to raise the bar higher and to show people that, this is what we are doing.
I would also like to bring some points in. First thing that we did notice in terms of changes in attitude and behaviors, and even an increase in attendance, and the uptick of parent engagement and involvement. Many of our families we saw became more engaged in the process of learning when they were able to have conversations with black males as their teachers, because many of our mothers and some of our fathers also we're saying, I need you to be this role model for my child, or I can't reach my child at this point. There's something I can't help them with. And where these men filled the position, we actually had a father figure daughter dance, and we had a couple of young ladies that wanted to go, but they did not have that father or father figure that would escort them. So the gentlemen in our building, next thing you know, you have about 5 or 6 young ladies walking in per teacher, because they saw the need that this young lady wanted to be there, wanted to be a part of that special program, and that person stepped in. I have a fraternity brother who is a school administrator in a suburban area, and I'm in an urban area, and we were hanging out one day and somewhere in DC, and I said to him, I bet you I'm gonna see at least 5 of my students on this particular strip, and or former students, and I did, of course. It exceeded the 5, and he turned to me and asked, like, I don't know how you can do it, and my response to him was, we're needed in both areas. I'm needed in the urban area to show that this that the need is there, and that Black men do exist in leadership positions and in communities that want to grow. And then also you're needed in the area where Black males are not represented. So that young white male teacher, young white male student or parent may need to see you in the same leadership position as myself. And then also we saw there were behavior changes in the classrooms led by Black males, and there was maybe a decrease in behaviors and attention span and effort in teachers that were not Black males. And so again, our Black male educators stepped in and just said, you're not doing this for me, you don't just do this in my class, but level of respect to how you carry yourself as a young man and young woman, that should be an expectation even outside of my classroom. And so when they were able to see that this educator cared that much about them outside of their classroom, the students began to talk and walk a little bit differently. They also began to have different conversations. So it wasn't about the latest, gossip or beef via Instagram or Facebook or whatever. We're having discussions, or even the other morning I stepped outside the building to my duty post and heard a little bit of ruckus. And I'm going over to the students, and they were actually arguing over their grade in the science class, that they were not happy with the particular grade in the science class. This is a young lady, and she was like, I'm going right to the teacher right now to have a conversation, advocating for herself. So we do see that there has been a change in terms of increase in attendance, attention span, and just, again, the effort put forth to reach certain goals, and that students are becoming advocates for themselves in and outside the classroom.
Thank you. And there's also, Andre, there's a follow-up question for you, which is, how important is it for Black male teachers to have support groups in their schools where they can share their concerns, problems, and gain feedback and encouragement?
So we have both the formal and informal. Because I have a shirt and tie, I don't want to go too much into the informal right now. But when educators come to me or I go to them, and we have conversations about rigor, about content, about Common Core standards, about sub-skills for the standards, scaffolding lessons, planning, objectives, those things that you have conversations about with educators. We also have conversations about, I need a prayer right now. I'm getting texts about morning devotionals. There's been this basketball league that started with our males of color, that they just after school or before school, and this was a natural progression because they saw and supported each other. They have their own outlets to build around students, to plan their own home visits, and also to support each other in births of children. Actually, we had our male librarian, a Black librarian, recently passed, and just the amount of love that was extended from the males in the building to the female students, to the male students, and to each other. So we have those conversations that, as a walking down the hall, we can switch from Common Core state standards to what was on television last night to how your wife and kids doing. And so we can cross lines and still have respect for each other because the personal relationship was built around the work. And seeing that everyone is growing and everyone's supporting each other, they're seeing that they're growing in their adult learning as an educator, and also they're building friendships and camaraderie around the work that was, again, started here when everyone came on to take on this mission and our goals about building.
Thank you. And we have another question. I think this is for all of you, which is there's a widespread myth that teaching is a low-wage job. So how can we dispel this myth, and which many people may point to as a way of discouraging more Black males into the profession?
Can you repeat what type of job is it? What was the word?
The saying that teaching is a low-wage job. So it's asking how can we dispel the myth, and because that myth is used often as a way to discourage more Black males from joining teaching as a profession.
So that's a reality. It is a low wage job. I honestly think the payment and comes from of an emotional standpoint, and seeing students and their growth and seeing yourself grow in the craft, in the field. I honestly believe when you're committed to being an educator, and I use the word educator instead of a teacher because I think there's a difference. When you committed yourself to being a change agent and a servant leader, some of that low wage, which is a big deal for everyone's life, becomes equal to the payment you get when you see student growth and you see student change and you see the result of what you poured into students as an educator. Much of, we've had a conversation around here is, how often do you hear someone say to a student that's very smart, you know what, when you grow up, you're so smart, when you grow up, you're going to be a teacher.
Right.
You oftentimes hear someone say, you're going to be an engineer, or you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so when you can put someone in front of you that shows that they're pouring into you as a student to be better than you were when you hit that door at 8:10 in the morning, at 3:16 when you walk out that door, that you are stronger than what you are when you walk in at 8:10, then that is that payment. And then when that student takes that home and begins to be, again, that change agent in their home, and then their home, it germinates, and that family becomes change agents in the community, that is what brings you back every single day.
I'd like to also add to that. I totally agree with Brother Samuels about that. I started using the word educator very early on, but we have to not only show our students. So first of all, I don't know of too many high-paying jobs when you're serving people. Most jobs serving people don't pay a lot, but we never, as Brother Samuel said, encourage people to be a teacher. And so that's definitely something that when you have a passion for service, your reward is the people you serve, regardless of which area of human service that you go into. And then also, I think one of the things that I didn't necessarily know as much about early on, we have to show our kids pathways in and around within education itself. There'll be a time when you'll be desperately needed in that classroom, and then there'll be a time when your day in that classroom is over, but there are other things that you can do, like Brother Samuels himself, being a school leader. And that's just as important for them to see. And there are ways to augment your income when you're in education as well. And I think these are some of the honest discussions. I mean, I ran a tutoring program afterwards from my teaching day, which augmented some of my income. And then we want people to also advocate at their state levels when we start talking about policy, to treat education and teachers as professionals, because we are trained professionals. And so we need to make sure that we're advocating on that level as well, to make sure that policies get changed in which we can bring teaching back to the forefront of careers.
And also allowing the educator to be the leader in growing their craft, to provide guidance to a new educator. Even within schools, there are opportunities in terms of to address the low wage part, the opportunities to be a department chair, to tutor after school, there are things again to support your income. And again, in that work that supports your income, you're actually growing in your craft, where someone can come in as a classroom educator and the following year, part-time classroom educator, part-time coach, and get that stipend, where they're leading professional development, they're co-teaching, they're guiding, they're using their expertise in the classroom to now help guide another younger educator or even an elder educator and expose them to new technology or blended learning or tech integration. And then taking that and maybe tutoring after school. And yes, I definitely agree. The work of service oftentimes is not the highest paying job. And as an educator, when you step into this career and decide that this is your drive and this is your why, you'll find other ways to support your income because this is your calling to really work within communities and within schools.
Right. Thank you so much. We have actually a ton more questions, but not enough time. So what we'll do is we will save all the questions that you all asked, and we'll send them to our presenters to answer via written form and send those back out to you all. But I do want to thank you again, Andre, Yoder, and Chris, for your amazing insights. We'll be continuing this conversation again also on the next webinar, but I'll pass it on to Sheba to close us out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamila. And just another huge thank you to our speakers, Mr. Andre Samuels, Mr. Faulkner, and my colleague, Chris Rutherford, for just the amazing insight on this important topic today. And as Jamila said, with additional questions, we're definitely going to continue to dive deeper into this topic on increasing the presence of Black male educators in the classroom on our second, or our part two, if you will, in this series, which will be June 27th at 4 p.m. We also just want to extend just a huge and warm thank you to our CEO and fierce leader, Sean Dove, for his leadership and for paving the way for CBMA to carry out just the important work that we get to do. And, of course, a big thank you to Dr. Robert Simmons, our National VP of Strategy and Innovation, for his leadership to move CBMA's High School Excellence Framework forward across our nation. And, of course, last but not least, all of you, we just want to thank you for being here with us today, spending time with us, and just engaging with us today. Feel free to continue to send us any feedback that you may have or any additional questions from today's webinar, and we look forward to next session, which will be next month, to just continue to dive deeper. And we'll have a different set of speakers, and but just continuing to dive deeper into this topic. So if some of you are not already a member, we would love to invite you to go on our website and sign up to become a member. Once you sign up, you will begin receiving our monthly newsletters and invitations to our monthly network calls and many other resources. We also share information through our social media networks, so please feel free to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So we look forward to remaining in touch with you. Thank you all for your time today, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.